Good afternoon, everybody. And here we are at the end of a very special week at the United Nations with the Climate Summit and the General Assembly. And I think, I don't know how many of you have been following the events over the last week, but we are quite excited to see nature and biodiversity and nature-based solutions so much part of the conversations. And maybe something like this would have not been possible a few years ago. So I think it's to the efforts of all of you in this room and so many more others out there that we are starting to maybe make some good connection between biodiversity, climate change, land, oceans, forests, all together. I would like to begin by thanking the Global Landscapes Forum, the Center for International Research, C4, UN Environment, the World Bank, and all charter members for their leadership in advancing the upcoming UN Decade on Ecosystems Restoration. I would also like to thank you for the chance to follow directly after the important discussion on oceans that we all just heard. As former US President John F. Kennedy once said in his own tribute to the oceans, we all come from the sea. And it is an interesting biological fact that all of us have in our veins the exact same percentage of salt in our blood that exists in the oceans. And therefore, we have salt in our blood, in our sweat, and in our tears. And when we go back to the sea, we are going back from whence we came. President Kennedy was right. The oceans are the original source of all life, and they continue to provide for the survival of all life on Earth. For every true breath you take, one of them is from the oceans. The other breath is from the forests and diverse landscapes that we have also heard about today. So we are all dependent on nature, from the oceans and land, for our very survival, and in fact, we all are nature ourselves. If you are alive, if you draw breath, you are one with nature, and one with everyone in this room and beyond, working so hard to protect and restore it. I don't have to tell this room about the crisis we now face, the interlocking perils of biodiversity loss, ecosystem degradation, and climate change are mutually reinforcing and represent a threat that endangers all life on this planet, including our own. I want to focus on the hope, though, that I see in this room and beyond from the growing coalition of those who are committed to restore balance to the planetary systems. This is a diverse movement for change that encompasses us all. The youth who are rightly marching in the streets and speaking truth in the halls of power. The indigenous people and local communities who are on the front lines to protect nature, their proud traditions, and even their very lives to the ultimate benefit of us all. The innovative and entrepreneurial business leaders who know that the enterprises of the future will be green and sustainable. The government leaders who understand they must invest in a better future for their people and for all of us. And so many more. As this gathering shows, we can all work together. I know this has been an intense week for all of us, but it is fitting that we would end with a discussion of restoration. As a community, we must go on the offensive. Our agenda is forward-looking, holistic, and integrated. It is opportunity-based, and it can be achieved. It is about the future and about restoring nature and all of our rightful place in this world. For our part, at the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, this next year is a very, very important one. It's a year where we are committed to advancing a common agenda across the biodiversity, climate, oceans, land, and sustainable development as our parties negotiate a new global biodiversity framework post-2020. Indeed, we call the 2020 the super year at the United Nations. This new framework will be a landmark agreement that will be negotiated at our 15th Conference of the Parties that will be hosted by China in Kunming next year in October. And we need your help to get the word out, to innovate solutions, and to build a global movement to adopt and implement a transformative agreement, one that can help us respond to the challenges put forward and the science that is evidence from the IPES report, from the IPCC reports, from the Food and Land Use FOLU report just launched this week. The United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration will run alongside the new Global Biodiversity Framework and provides a unique opportunity to advance all agendas with nature-based solutions. Indeed, the next decade would be absolutely critical. It is in the next decade and the actions that we take that will set our course maybe for the next centuries. Nature-based solutions are scalable, cost-effective, and deliver multiple benefits to diverse communities. Yet nature-based solutions only receive 2% of climate funding, even though they represent up to 30% of the climate solution, as envisioned and allow for critical gains in biodiversity. So now, as we leave this week behind us, we need to draw breath from nature, from the oceans, from the forests, and recommit ourselves to action together with it and together with all of us as a community. Together, we can indeed bend the curve of biodiversity loss by 2030 and the runaway climate change and advance equity, inclusion, and sustainable development for all of us and for all nature. And in closing, I also want to tell you that the theme of the Conference of the Parties next year in China is Ecological Civilization, Building a Shared Future for All Life on Earth. And I think that captures very well the togetherness, the future that we have to build, and also the fact that ecological civilization is perhaps one of the pathways in which we aspire to arrive at a living in harmony with nature and live on a planet where we can feed all the many billions of people that will be here and have a good life within the planetary boundaries. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be with you. Thank you.